You know that moment when you turn your back for literally 2 seconds and suddenly your living room looks like a mini war zone. One child screaming, the other crying, and somewhere in the middle, a perfectly innocent toy lying in pieces on the floor. If you're nodding, I feel you. I've been there more times than I care to count. Let me tell you something straight. If you think your children will naturally get along, bless your optimism. Sibling rivalry is not a quirk, a phase, or a sign that you're failing as a parent. It's normal. It's universal. Heck, it's wired into humans for survival, social learning, and yes, even the occasional subtle manipulation. But here's the kicker. Understanding why it happens and knowing how to handle it can turn those daily explosions of he said, she said into opportunities for growth, empathy, and even laughter, eventually. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to take you inside the minds of your children, share why fights flare up, what most parents get wrong, and practical strategies that actually work, without losing your sanity. So buckle up. By the end of this, you might just start seeing those arguments not as chaos, but as tiny, chaotic lessons in diplomacy, negotiation, and sibling survival. Siblings. You bring one child into the world, and suddenly there's a tiny, adorable rival waiting in the wings, ready to argue over the exact same crayon your firstborn was holding 2 seconds ago. And before you know it, your home feels less like a sanctuary and more like a courtroom drama with Lego bricks as evidence. But here's the thing. Those fights aren't random. Oh no, there's a whole psychology behind the sparks. First, let's talk about attention. Children are like little emotional sponges, constantly scanning the environment for validation and approval. When one sibling arrives, the firstborn doesn't just notice a new human. They notice that some of the attention that used to be theirs is now being shared. Cue jealousy. And jealousy, my dears, is the fuel of many epic toy battles. The younger sibling isn't off the hook either. They're fighting for recognition, for a voice, and yes, for that toy that somehow belongs to the older one in their mind. Then there's temperament. Some children are naturally fiery, impulsive, or highly sensitive, while others are calm, deliberate, or perfectionistic. When you mix these personalities in close quarters, friction is almost guaranteed. Think of it like mixing oil and water, a little shake, and suddenly there's a storm over who gets the last slice of pizza. Birth order plays a role too. Firstborns often feel pressured to be responsible or perfect. Middle children can wrestle with invisibility, and youngest children sometimes learn to manipulate the chaos to their advantage. Science even supports this. Studies on birth order show patterns of dominance, competition, and negotiation that are surprisingly predictable. Social comparison is another culprit. Children constantly measure themselves against their siblings, grades, physical skills, friends, even how fast they can clean their room. When they perceive inequality, resentment brews. A classic scenario. One child gets a compliment for finishing homework on time, and the other throws a tantrum, convinced life is so unfair. It's less about the homework and more about feeling valued. Emotional regulation is still developing at these ages, so what adults might solve with a calm conversation, kids respond to with a scream, a stomp, or a full-on dramatic collapse on the floor. And here's a little secret many parents overlook. Rivalry isn't inherently bad. In fact, it's evolutionarily designed to teach negotiation, patience, and empathy. When children argue, they're testing boundaries, learning to express frustration, and discovering how to navigate social dynamics, skills that will serve them for a lifetime. The key is understanding the triggers so that the conflict doesn't escalate into chronic tension. So the next time you hear your two arguing over whose turn it is to use the tablet, take a deep breath and remember, underneath the noise and chaos, your children are learning to navigate the world, their emotions, and each other. And if you're lucky, someday they'll thank you. Or at least tolerate each other at family gatherings. Now let's get real for a moment. One of the biggest mistakes parents make with sibling rivalry is thinking their job is to stop it entirely. Oh, bless your hearts, we try. We rush in like firefighters to extinguish every argument, every scream, every dramatic, "she hit me first." But here's the problem. When we swoop in too fast, we often make it worse. We take sides. We enforce rigid fairness, or worse, we punish the loudest child without ever understanding what set off the storm. Take this scene, which I've seen more times than I can count. An older child is sitting at the table, carefully working on homework, while the younger one barges in demanding attention. The parent, trying to maintain order, yells at the yeller to leave the older sibling alone. Immediate compliance? Maybe. Resentment? Guaranteed. Because what the parent didn't see was that the older child had been subtly dismissive all morning, leaving the younger sibling feeling ignored. One-sided interventions create tension, not harmony. Parents also tend to misinterpret fairness. We think fairness means equal treatment, same snack, same playtime, same consequences. But children aren't identical. They have different needs, temperaments, and emotional capacities. True fairness is about meeting each child where they are, not forcing them into identical boxes. For example, the older child may need quiet time to unwind after school, while the younger one needs guidance and attention. Treating both the same often sparks the very fights we're trying to prevent. Another common trap? Overreacting to normal sibling arguments. I know, it's hard. The screaming, the door slamming, the tattling, it's enough to make you feel like you're losing your mind. But here's the thing. Conflict isn't always a crisis. Some of it is simply them learning to negotiate, assert themselves, and cope with disappointment. Jumping in with punishments every time they disagree teaches them nothing about managing emotions. It just trains them to avoid you while the tension simmers. So, what actually works? Observation and guidance, not domination. Watch the patterns. Who triggers whom? Which conflicts escalate and which resolve naturally? Validate feelings. I see you're upset that your sister took your crayon. That's frustrating. Then step back and let them try to work it out. You're not abandoning them. You're teaching problem-solving and self-regulation. And yes, sometimes you need to set limits. Boundaries are crucial. But there's a big difference between guiding and micromanaging. A small pause, a deep breath, and a little patience often work better than a loud lecture or a hasty punishment. Remember, children are watching not just what we say, but how we handle tension ourselves. If we model calm, measured responses, they learn to do the same, eventually. Parenting through sibling rivalry isn't about enforcing perfect peace. It's about teaching skills that will last a lifetime: negotiation, empathy, patience, and emotional awareness. It's messy, noisy, and exhausting, but the payoff is children who can resolve conflicts with each other and, later, with the world. All right, now that we've seen why kids fight and how parents sometimes unintentionally fan the flames, let's get to the good stuff. Practical strategies that actually work. And no, I'm not talking about vague advice like be patient or teach them to share. I mean concrete, doable tactics that can turn chaos into cooperation, sometimes even fun. First, create opportunities for teamwork instead of forced sharing. Siblings don't naturally love to share every toy or privilege. It has to be meaningful. For example, assign them a joint task like building a Lego city or baking cookies. Suddenly, they're negotiating roles, collaborating on decisions, and yes, sometimes arguing, but the argument is productive. They learn to compromise, plan together, and feel a sense of accomplishment when the task is complete. It's subtle, but it shifts the focus from me versus you to us versus the challenge. Second, carve out individualized attention. Every child needs to know they're seen and valued for who they are. Even 10 minutes of one-on-one time reading, playing, or just chatting can prevent resentment from building. I've seen households where parents obsess over fairness in a rigid, everyone gets the same way, and it backfires. Children can sense the difference between being acknowledged and being treated as an interchangeable unit. Personalized attention reduces jealousy and makes them more willing to cooperate when conflicts arise. Third, teach emotional literacy. Kids don't automatically know how to name their feelings or manage frustration. Simple phrases like, "I see you're angry because your brother took the marker," do wonders. Role play can help too. Swap positions, act out conflicts, and guide them in expressing themselves respectfully. By giving them the words and tools to express frustration, you reduce the frequency and intensity of fights. Fourth, model respectful disagreement. Children learn more from observing how adults handle conflict than from any lecture. When you're having a minor disagreement with a partner or friend, narrate it aloud. I'm upset that my coffee got cold, but I'm going to take a deep breath and explain why calmly. They see a real-life blueprint for handling emotions, and yes, they will try to mimic it, sometimes immediately, sometimes after a few years. And finally, celebrate small victories. Did they compromise over the TV remote? Did they finish a project together without screaming? Praise it. Positive reinforcement is more effective than punishment in shaping behavior. Even subtle acknowledgement. I noticed how you both waited your turn today. Nice job. Encourages repeat behavior. Now, I won't sugarcoat it. There will still be fights. There will still be tears, slammed doors, and dramatic proclamations of, "This is the worst day of my life." But using these strategies consistently teaches children to navigate conflicts with empathy, patience, and creativity. And the beauty of it? Over time, you'll notice fewer explosions over toys and more natural negotiation, cooperation, and even moments of sibling camaraderie. Sibling rivalry doesn't disappear, but it can transform. With intentional guidance, you're not just stopping fights, you're teaching skills your children will carry into friendships, work, and eventually, their own families. And trust me, that payoff is worth every exasperated sigh along the way. Now here's where things get serious. Most sibling rivalry is loud, messy, and exhausting, but normal. However, sometimes those arguments signal something more than ordinary tension. And knowing the difference can save a lot of long-term headaches. Red flags usually show up when fights are no longer about toys or attention, but about power, control, or persistent negativity. For example, one child may consistently bully the other, physically, verbally, or emotionally, and the younger one might start withdrawing entirely. Or maybe the conflicts never seem to end. Every interaction turns into a confrontation, leaving everyone in the house on edge. That's when rivalry shifts from developmental learning to a potential risk for emotional well-being. Psychology explains why this matters. Children exposed to frequent unresolved conflict can develop chronic stress, anxiety, or lower self-esteem. They may struggle to form healthy relationships later because their early experiences taught them that disagreement equals danger. And parents, constant exposure to escalating fights can lead to burnout, guilt, or even overcompensation, unintentionally reinforcing the patterns they're trying to fix. So what can you do when rivalry crosses the line? Step 1. Observe without panic. Take notes of patterns. Who instigates? Which triggers spark the most intense conflicts? Sometimes just identifying the root causes, whether it's jealousy over attention, differences in temperament, or unmet needs, can inform practical solutions. Step 2. Intervene constructively. This doesn't mean stepping in to punish or lecture every time. It means guiding the children to reflect on the situation. I noticed you pushed your sister. What was happening that made you feel that way? Encourage them to name emotions, take responsibility, and brainstorm better ways to respond next time. It's conflict resolution in action, not punishment theatre. Step 3. Consider professional help if patterns persist. A child therapist or family counselor can provide strategies for communication, emotional regulation, and sibling dynamics, especially when the tension affects school performance, friendships, or self-confidence. Early intervention is key. Waiting for things to blow over can make issues harder to untangle later. And here's an often overlooked tip. Focus on your own reactions. Children learn more from what we model than what we say. If we stay calm, measured, and empathetic, they pick up those skills. If we snap, take sides, or react impulsively, we inadvertently reinforce the very behaviors we're trying to prevent. Remember, red flags aren't about shaming your children. They're about awareness and action. Sibling rivalry is normal, but unchecked escalation can have real consequences. The goal is balance. Allow normal disagreements to teach empathy and negotiation, while recognizing when intervention, guidance, or outside support is needed. By paying attention, staying calm, and providing the right tools, you can turn even the most heated rivalry into lessons in self-control, cooperation, and resilience. Skills your children will carry well beyond your living room. Now, let's flip the script. What if, instead of seeing sibling rivalry as a constant headache, we start viewing it as an opportunity? I promise you, those arguments, tears, and slammed doors can actually be stepping stones toward stronger sibling bonds, if guided the right way. The key is perspective. Rivalry teaches empathy, patience, and negotiation, skills your children will carry into friendships, workplaces, and even their own families one day. Think about it. When two kids negotiate who gets the front seat in the car, compromise over a video game, or decide who gets to read the bedtime story, they're practicing conflict resolution in real life. Sure, it's messy, but those messy lessons stick. One strategy is to highlight and celebrate collaboration. When your kids find a way to share, compromise, or work together, praise it specifically. I love how you two figured out a fair way to split the Lego project. That's better than vague praise, because it teaches them exactly what behavior you value. Over time, they start associating collaboration with recognition and satisfaction, and yes, fewer fights. Another powerful tool is creating family rituals that foster bonding. Shared meals, weekly game nights, or even small daily check-ins can build trust and connection. These moments help children see each other as teammates rather than opponents. Even a simple team huddle before tackling chores or homework can shift the focus from competition to cooperation. It's also important to encourage individuality while nurturing the relationship. Each child should feel their unique strengths are acknowledged, but also understand that the sibling relationship has its own value. For example, one child might excel at art, the other at sports. Celebrating both talents while creating opportunities for shared experiences reinforces mutual respect. And let's be honest, humor works wonders. I've seen kids who fought over a single cookie dissolve into laughter when the parent makes a light, playful comment about the absurdity of the battle. Humor diffuses tension, reminds everyone that love is stronger than the fight, and subtly teaches perspective. Even in moments of rivalry, you can guide children to resolve conflicts themselves. Ask questions like, "How can you both get what you want?" Or, "What's a fair way to handle this?" When kids come up with solutions, they're building problem-solving skills, emotional regulation, and accountability. And over time, these repeated exercises can turn former rivals into allies, or at least cohabitants who can tolerate each other without daily warfare. So yes, sibling rivalry will always exist in some form, but with intentional guidance, observation, and a dash of creativity, you can help your children transform those arguments into meaningful lessons and even occasional moments of laughter. What starts as a battlefield can become a training ground for empathy, cooperation, and lifelong connection. And trust me, there's nothing quite like watching former enemies become teammates in their own small, wonderful way. So, let's wrap this up. Sibling rivalry is normal, yes, loud, messy, and sometimes exhausting, but it's also an opportunity. By understanding the triggers, avoiding common parental mistakes, teaching conflict resolution skills, and celebrating cooperation, you're giving your children tools they'll use long after they leave your home. Remember, it's not about eliminating fights entirely. It's about guiding your kids to navigate emotions, negotiate fairly, and build lasting bonds. A little patience, a touch of humor, and consistent attention go a long way. I'd love to hear your stories, the fights, the triumphs, and even the ridiculous arguments that left you shaking your head. Share them in the comments. I may even respond personally. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's help every parent turn sibling rivalry into relationship building.